Well, hello everyone, and today we have a very special guest here at Betway. Someone that here, not only a personal fan favorite of mine, but someone in New York that everyone loves. And today we have the great, the one and only Bart Scott. How we doing?
Kuna Matatos, man. What's up with you? Hopefully
How's it?
all is well, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, of course. Thanks for taking the busy time out of your day. I know you got a lot going on, so we'll get right into it.
My
Uh, you
fro,
know,
my fro, okay.
your fro looks great. Come on, you know this. My hair is a little, I need a haircut ASAP, but I digress. So listen, Patrick Mahomes, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I'll tell you this much. Early in the year, there's no way I would have said the Kansas City Chiefs would be in the
yeah.
Super Bowl. And here we are today. Patrick Mahomes, I don't know if you saw it on Twitter or they call it X, with his dad bod, right? That Patrick Mahomes now has, which is making me feel good, is in the Super Bowl. How does he
Yeah.
do it? And especially as an underdog.
Well, that's crazy, right? When you talk about dad bods, right? You think about some of the best athletes in the world right now. You look at our best basketball player, Nikola Jokic. He got man boobs. You know what I mean, coming out of there. You look at Tyson Fury, the most dangerous man in the world. He's got love handles, right?
Yep.
And add Patrick Mahomes to it. Now we all knew what it probably looked like under there. But the picture is just confirmation. We knew he was like a little skinny fat. You know what I mean? Going on. We see him with the MVP commercials. He's a great bundler. He bundling some high blood insulin going on over there, man. But listen, I
Yep.
tell you what. When you talk about what's built is better what's born. You talk about a guy who perfected his craft. You talk about a guy who admittedly didn't understand how to to understand like what type of coverages was coming on and decipher which coverages, rotation of the safeties. And now like he's in his bag, right? Most athletes get to this point around 27, 28, and that's when body and mind kind of meets, right? Because early on you all athleticism, reacting, fast twitch, and then the game slows down for you, and the game has slowed down for you. And I told people before, and I picked the Ravens to win. Of course, they were the better team, but experience mattered, right? And you talk about the collective group, that the Ravens have, and the fact that when you look at, Lamar Jackson looked super tight. He had that same glazed look on his face that we saw with Dak Prescott. Had that same glazed look that he had with Josh Allen, right? And you understand that, you got to be able to have a slow heartbeat, when you're in a hostile environment. And all the pressure was on the Ravens because they were the number one seed, best defense, one of the best offenses. And the pressure wasn't on Patrick Mahomes. For the first time in a long time, he was the underdog. So they were able to be calm. And you look at the game and you see, what side lost their poise. Van Noy, a guy who's had success with the Patriots. I believe he has a Super Bowl, but he lost his poise, right? Headbutting and all the bad plays happened on the Ravens side. And I thought they lost their identity and they panicked because their defense, Patrick Mahomes, able to sustain long drives early on, and that was just enough, right? And whenever you play in playoff games, it's usually dominated by the better coordinator and a better game plan. And you have to try and adjust and hope you didn't dig yourself too big of a hole. And I didn't think the Ravens dug themselves too big of a hole. But Todd Monken, who's new back to the NFL from Georgia, panicked and forgot about running the football and what the Achilles heel of the Kansas City Chiefs was. And he lost his mind. And you can talk about panicking and not being able to live up to expectations. That goes for players and coaches alike.
Yeah, and you mentioned this, and I was seeing something. I think the Ravens ran 5 design run plays on first down. Which, as a former player, Bart, when you hear, oh, the opposing team, like the Chiefs, I think they were ranked 24th against the run. Do you really, does that process in your mind and go, okay, this is their weakness. How can we exploit that, knowing that the Ravens, their strength was running the football?
Well, you talk about averaging over 156 yards a game, and not to give your running back an opportunity. That's because you panicked, right? Because you saw the defense didn't really have an answer, couldn't really get off the field. Kelsey, at one point, I think Mahomes was 11 for 11. So when you don't have that, like I think the team as a whole panicked, like, wow, we're not going to get this many possessions. We need to take advantage of them. Like not in any game have you ever seen Lamar Jackson throw the ball 37 times. That's just not the recipe for success. And they went back to an old blueprint that San Diego at the time, San Diego Chargers went to, and putting 6 DBs out there. Well, that should invite when you have a 300-pound, you know, fullback, then that suggests that you run the ball and get play action over the top. And they forgot who they were. You heard John Harbaugh coming out at halftime saying, "Hey, we got to establish a run the ball," and that's what happens. That's why I always love Vrabel, because no matter what Vrabel team-led teams are going to do, they're going to stick to their identity. If we're going to lose, we're going to lose at being who we are and who we were. And that's what you saw when you look at the other side, Dan Campbell. And people can criticize his decision making, but that's how he's lived and died the entire year. I can
Yeah.
live with that as a team. Like, this is what we do. I can live with that. Sometimes you hit, sometimes you don't. But the Ravens going down being a passing team, is surprising to me. And McDonald got hired today as the defense coordinator, as the head coach for the Seattle Seahawks. But I thought he didn't have a great game either, because if I'm looking at that team, understanding that Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce eats up zone coverage, then why are you
Yeah.
playing zone coverage? I mean, I have $100 million cornerback now. I think he's lost a step when you talk about Marlon Humphreys, but
Yeah.
I'd rather put the heavy lifting on him than to put the heavy lifting on my linebackers and a second-year player, right?
Yeah.
Because I know that the second-year player is arguably going against the greatest tight end in the NFL history, right there with Tony Gonzalez, um, Gronkowski, Antonio Gates. He's right there as far as the modern day tight end. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Why are you putting that pressure on a rookie? Like, I'm going to say this guy's not going to beat me and Patrick's not going to beat me. If I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose to Valdez Scantling. And I'm going to
Mhm.
lose to Rashid Rice, and I'm going to put the heavy lifting to stop Pacheco with my linebackers that both made All Pro and Pro Bowlers. So why wouldn't you bracket and double Kelce no matter where he went? Because if you put these guys have played together for a long time, he's going to find a hole in his zone, and it's not a typical route. He's just finding holes. So how do you defend that? If he's just coming and sitting down, he's just playing against your leverage, and he has a guy that they have, nonverbal communication with, and that's what you
Yeah.
saw. And then finally, in the second half, they make the adjustments, but the damage is already done, because not only did it affect the way in which they decided to play defense, it affected the way that they play offense, because their offense coordinators say, "Oh, we can't stop him. Mahomes, we might have to win a shootout." 17-10. What are we talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree, Bart. And another thing too, when you mentioned zone, right? And a lot of people are screaming, "Why don't you go man?" I go, to me, obviously just an opinion, but I felt like there's two quarterbacks that you really can't play zone with, because they manipulate you really well with their eyes. And that's the guy that they lost to, Patrick Mahomes, and that's the guy that they almost lost to, got lucky in overtime, and that's Matthew Stafford. He was able to dice him up on the zone because he's able to manipulate you with his eyes. And listen, not every quarterback is like that. Not every quarterback can look you off and quick throw to the right side, even though he's looking left. And I agree. I think they should have adjusted, and they should have adjusted earlier. Go man, put someone on Kelce, bump him, do something, double him, but you can't let him run these routes, because Patrick Holmes is going to eat you up, and that's exactly what they did.
Well, you can do both. You can play man and zone. You can
Yeah,
play
that's true.
matchup zone. So you can play zone. Everybody else can play zone, and you can lock a man on somebody and bracket him at the same time, right? Just like we have complex coverages depending on the formation, you can play quarters and halves. You can play quarters to the backside, because if it's
Yeah,
3-by-1 on one side, you can what we call either pack that side, and then you can half the backside, because if it's three on one side, who cares about playing halves on the other side? It's only one receiver, and you have
yeah,
a backside linebacker, a corner, and a safety. So that allows you to either, and what we used to do it with the Ravens, if we felt confident, we played, cover four to the front side. And then the backside, we would just say, okay, this guy doesn't exist. We'll lock Revis or lock Chris McAllister on the backside guy. And if that's Valdez Scanling, or if that's, Rasheed Rice, you have $100 million corner, then you do that. And then all you have to do is you lock your backside linebacker on the running back.
yeah,
So if he comes to the zone side, you man. If he comes to the deuce side, what we call it, you man him. If he goes to the front side, you wait for something coming back, because that means four strong. Four strong to one side, that means that you can let the first crossers go, because he's going back to an unoccupied defender. So it's
yeah.
things like that. So like what happens is, I thought the coordinators picked a bad day to have a bad day, and they did. they didn't make the adjustments once they saw what the adjustments was to Andy Reid. They decided to go big. And they decided to go big because they knew with Tooney being injured that it's going to be difficult for them to hold up in pass protection. So they went with these, Tiger, well, we call it Tiger personnel. Some people go with a number system. We go Tiger Jumbo, right? Tiger is basically two tight ends. And they know that, most teams don't have elaborate blitz packages off of Tiger. So it kept them out of their blitz packages, right? But also it allowed them to have big on big so that they can help to buy Mahomes time. So you saw Mahomes really didn't get any pressure on him, and you would think that they would with the team that had as many sacks as they did. So that's why they didn't make the adjustments. And now, you have to ask yourself, if you're Baltimore, if not now, then when? Because next year, who knows if what a healthy Aaron Rodgers means to the Jets? Who knows what adjustments that the Bills are going to make? Who knows what a healthy Joe Burrow means within that division? Because right now, if you have to ask yourself, if anybody proved that they can is potentially the rival of Patrick Mahomes, is Lou Amoroto as a defender being able to defend Patrick, and it's Joe Burrow being able to match him throw for throw. So right now, we trying to find that Peyton Tom Brady matchup. The matchup to me may be Joe Burrow. We thought it was Lamar because we thought, hey, it was unfair for us to judge Lamar based on his playoff record because he was only in his first year as a starter when he won the MVP and he's been injured for 2 years. So now let's judge him now as he's mature and now he has receivers. I thought Odell Beckham didn't offer much to the game. Zay Flowers, I'm sure, young players do young things sometimes as learning moments for him. But, it shouldn't have been that sense of pressure because I don't think that they should have been able to put that many points up.
Yeah, and speaking now on the Ravens, where do they go from here, right? How can they get back to the Super Bowl? I thought, listen, this is the best shot they have, right? I mean, like you mentioned, right? The Bengals were out of it. A lot of injuries to the quarterbacks and Aaron Rodgers, right? And Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs aren't as strong as years past. What can they do to get back? What can Lamar and this team, especially now you're losing your defensive coordinator, as we saw with Philly when they lost, they are both coordinators, right? They weren't the same. Where do the Ravens go from here?
Well, one, it starts with figuring out who's going to be um, the next defense coordinator, and maybe that's in the house, maybe that's Anthony Weaver, who was, who knows the system, who was drafted, with me, who was a teammate of mine, but also was a coach of mine when I was at the Jets, and he was with Rex for a long time. Then he went to Houston as a defensive coordinator for the 1 year, and he's being interviewed for the job there, for the commander's job as well. He's interviewed for that job. So maybe they do it in-house, or maybe they decide to go and maybe try and have a reunion with Wink Martindale, bring him back home. That's where it all started, right? McDonald was underneath Wink Martindale. Maybe they go there. Maybe they decide to think outside of the box, but it has to start there. Then it's going to be tough because you think about Jadeveon Clowney's going to try and cash in on being able to have his best season. You hope that Owe and Ajobu can come back and be that 1-2 punch. I think they went out and got Van Noy because of Ajobu with the injury. Coming from college, which is, they got him because of the injury, but now they have to deal with the injuries. I don't know if it was the same injury, but they have to address that. And then I think, Patrick Queen has to graduate. Oddly enough, Patrick Queen didn't play the type of football that he played until Raekwon Smith came and took all the heavy lifting and allowed him to just be an athlete, run and hit. So, he's going to have to go somewhere and prove that he can be a lead man because you're not going to pay two inside linebackers, $20+ million a year, but he's going to be able to command 15 to 18 because of what his resume looks like this year. So they're going to lose him. So they're going to be trying to find maybe a supplemental linebacker, maybe a Kawhi Alexander, a guy like that went up there with the who before that case happened was one of the best young linebackers for San Francisco. People forget that he was one of the best and he's only like 29 years old. So they have to do that. But they got to pay Metabike, which is going to be expensive. So it's time for the redistribution of funds in Baltimore. At some point, Lamar Jackson's contract is going to weigh heavy. $18 million hard on the cap for Odell Beckham. I think it's time for him to graduate from the program unless he wants to come back at a massive discount, right? Because he's not the player that we thought he was. Every time they try to make him a big play, I can't remember any big plays that he's made this year. Maybe a 100-yard season, I think maybe you can get away with, going out and giving a guy like Tyler Boyd, $12 million a year who's been in your division that understands how to make big plays and timely plays within your division. I don't think they can go, big game hunting when you consider, Calvin Ridley, T. Higgins, even Gabe Davis. I think they have to go with
Yeah.
somebody like a Tyler Boyd or somebody like that. We know that Hollywood Brown's going to be there, but that's two small receivers when you think about Zay and Hollywood Brown. So they have to address that. So it's a lot of things that they have to address. And at some point, I have to have a conversation with Ronnie Stelly, because Ronnie Stelly is $100 million guy, and we're rotating you in, giving you, giving you plays off,
Yeah.
giving you series off because of your knee. So we got to have a conversation there as well. So it's a lot to be done, and the Ravens can develop a lot of players. You look at defense; they developed a lot of players. Geno Stone, they're probably going to lose to free agency because he should be a starter. And so, like, it's a lot of pieces. Maybe they bring Chuck Smith back. Chuck Clark back. I mean, that didn't help us out at all with the Jets. But because he got injured, you can use that against him and give him a 1-year prove it deal and bring him there. So they got a lot of work to be done. Eric DeCoste is equipped and good at doing that. They have to decide what are they going to do at running back. Gus Edwards have earned the right to graduate. They want to try and keep him. What's the status of J.K. Dobbins? He's up for a contract. To me, it looks like a Derrick Henry type of team, in my opinion.
Wow, that's a good spot.
If you want to be the Ravens and a guy that also can do wildcat stuff, you go sign a guy like Derrick Henry and ask him if he's ready to win a Super Bowl or try and win a Super Bowl, and see if he's ready after coming off a lucrative contract. If he's willing to play for the right to win, not disrespect him, but give him good money, but not great.
No, and listen, he said it already, right? He wants to go to a place where he can win.
Yeah,
And
you
why
can make
not?
it incentive base, right? Incentive base, right? You talk about a team that should have, been playing for their third, title in their history, which is only a little bit over, I believe, 20 something years. The Ravens came to existence in 1996. So you're talking 27 years, could have had an opportunity to have 3 titles. That's saying a lot as well.
Yeah. Now, listen, arguably one of the best, linebackers in the game, Bart Scott. What's your opinion on Roquan Smith? How does he compare to other Ravens greats?
I mean, I think he's right there. I mean, I think he's better than me, right? I think C.J. Mosley has proven that he's a tremendous player as well. I think he's next in line as far as the great middle linebackers that man that spot. He plays the Ray spot. Patrick Queen plays my spot. C.J. Mosley played Ray spot, which is the spot that is supposed to be about production, right? And the production is the defense is surrounded to protect him, to allow him to use his smarts and his ability to scrape sideline to sideline. And he's proven the Ravens right. That defense didn't get elite until he got there, and Patrick Queen didn't get elite until he got there. So when you think about it, I would put him there as far as his impact. I'll put it right there underneath, right there with C.J. Mosley. When you think about that Mike linebacker, I was a Will linebacker, so he's the Mike linebacker. Mike linebacker is supposed to lead the league in tackles and not so much sacks, because they don't usually let that guy be the wild dog. Usually the Will linebacker is the guy that gets the sacks and blitz. So I think he's next in line. He did a great job in leading that team. But in Baltimore, when you compare it to Ray or in that likeness, you're ultimately measured by Super Bowls.
No, it's very true. And listen, we've talked briefly a little bit about the New York Jets, and that's the big topic here in New York. And, obviously Aaron Rodgers coming back from his Achilles injury. What do the Jets need to do this offseason to at least, try to compete for that Super Bowl that they've been, wishing to get?
Well, they can't get caught empty-handed without a good backup quarterback. Now, they thought they can rehabilitate Zach Wilson, but you think that when you talk about Zach Wilson and you talk about the Aaron Rodgers experiment, before Aaron Rodgers got there, he hadn't missed a game in 5 years. True to Jets, recent luck, he lasted 4 plays. So now you have to depend on somebody that was supposed to have a gap year. It's tough sledding, but they can't get caught. I think Zach's going to move on. They're going to find a place to send him. who knows? Maybe he goes replace Sam Darnold, as a cheaper option in San Francisco. But you talk about what they have to do. It has to start with the offensive line. Whether it's a kid from Penn State, people I think are overstating Joe Douglas' affinity or affection for the kid at Oregon State. Joe Alt is right there in Notre Dame. But that could be something that's trying to throw people off the scent, right? People move up and get him, and then they go with Joe Alt. I don't know how you pass on Joe Alt or the guy Pusano or from Penn State.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're able to do that. Especially when his comp is Joe Thomas and Tyron Smith. I just don't know. It's built like the Brickenshaw Ferguson, but it has to start with the offensive line. So I always say draft one, sign one. Right? When you think about the great offensive line that the Jets had, it was two guys that were drafted into Brickshaw Ferguson and Nick Mangold. But then after that, it was built by two key free agents. When you think about Damon Woody and Alan Faneca, and then it was anchored by a guy that they developed, a former defensive lineman, in Brandon Moore. So I think you have to be able to build it that way. They drafted two good ones. When you think about Vera Tucker and Titman, I think you can think that they're good, but I think it's time for Langton Tomlinson to graduate. He didn't live up to the expectations, and we thought he was going to play a lot better. But you have to consider he was playing next to the best left tackle of a generation, so life was easy for him. He didn't have that same luxury when he came here, so you have to consider that. So I think that you have to let him graduate, move Vera Tucker back to his natural position, quit moving him around. Don't let him be a tackle at all. Let him go ahead and play left guard right next to Titman. Now you have two guys that are great at pulling from the left side, and you do those piece of blocks. When you have the angles, you can pull the guard, you can pull the front side, you pull the center. But then you go and you look at guys like I believe the guy Eric Dotson, I believe his name, I'm not sure, from he actually plays right. He floors their right guard for
for the Rams.
For the Rams, yes,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So you go out and get them, you compete there, you got to spend money. So you draft one and you buy one. So that gives you four guys that you think that are elite unit, and then you got to hope that some of the other guys can continue to develop. But you start there, and then I think what people don't realize is when Aaron Rodgers said, "Hey, I need Alan Lazard." Alan Lazard's guy's never caught over 700 yards, 700 something yards during his career. He wasn't brought in to be a number two. He's brought in to be a number three and be a great blocker, right? And be a guy that can get timely catches, a guy that had chemistry with Aaron Rodgers at $11 million, which is not really a lot of money. It really was a 2-year deal for $22 million that was prorated over 4 so that it's a less of a salary cap hit. People forget that Corey Davis was brought here to be a 1 before they drafted Garrett Wilson, but he was supposed to be a number 2. And he was a pretty good 2. It's something that he's thrived at when he was, number 2 to AJ Brown.
Yeah.
Right. So people forget that he just up and retired under contract. And that was a tough hit. So they have to go out and address that. So the easiest thing to do is to trade a future, because you have to go all in. So I don't care about second round draft picks. If you want to trade your 2025 second round draft pick and a conditional like maybe 4 to the Raiders to be able to get Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams has 2 years left on his deal. The reason why I like the Jets trading for a guy like Devontae Adams is because you can't go out and be in the T. Higgins sweepstakes. You can't go out and be in the Calvin Ridley sweepstakes. You can't go out and be in the Gabe Davis sweepstakes simply because if you do that, that means you can't sign Garrett Wilson when he's up and eligible in 2 to 3 years, because if you're signing a guy that's getting his second contract, it's going to be for a 5-year deal. It's the same conversation that they're going to have in Miami when Jalen Waller was up and he's going to want $20 million a year. And you're saying, I'm paying Tyreek Hill. He's still pretty damn good. And it's the same discussion they're going to have when it's time to play Devontae Smith, when it's time, saying, hey, we paid $20 million to A.J. Brown. So the best way to do that is to bring a guy in that's in the middle of his career that you can trade for, that you trade his contract that's not that expensive anymore, right? Because now all the front money's been paid by the Raiders, and now you can be able to get Devontae Adams for $17 million a year for the next 2 years. And then he's 32 years old. He'll be 34 when that's over with. you want to sign him to a 1 year and keep him there, that's fine. But 34 years old, that's probably the life expectancy or the football expectancy of Aaron Rodgers at 2 more years. So that gives him a chance to win a title for the next 2 years with Aaron Rodgers. As soon as he graduates out of the program, you can pay Garrett Wilson. The problem that the Jets have is, they've drafted well. The problem is they all come up at the same time. So who are you going to pay? You're going to pay Sauce first, or you're going to pay Garrett Wilson first, or you're going to pay Jermaine Johnson, who by the time he's up is going to be an elite pass rusher. Right now, he's a good pass rusher. 8 sacks. Next year, he takes the next step. What if he gets 13? The Ravens are dealing with this with Menabike right now, right?
Yeah.
He took the lie. It took him 5 years to become a dominant pass rusher at 13 and a half. So Jermaine Johnson, by the time it's time to pay him. So now you have 3 guys all from the same draft class. And oh, by the way, if Vera Tucker stays healthy and shows everybody that he's the most complete offensive lineman in the game, if he stays healthy, you may have to pay him top of the dollar. So it's great and it's bad all at the same time. This is the year that you go talk to C.J. Mosley, you extend him, and you lower his cap hit. The $15 million when they paid him was the bar. It was the highest paid linebacker. Now that's around $18 million. You have to talk to him and have some conversations and maybe start stretching some guys out a little bit.
No, I mean, that's a great points, right? I mean, you're the Jets, right? You have to go all in, right? Aaron Rodgers only has maybe a year or 2 left, right? You can't worry about future draft picks, can't do that. But like you're right? Sauce Gardner, and they're going to want to get paid, right? And
two-time All-Pro, a 2-time All-Pro corner, a former rookie offensive player of the year. And, if he plays 1 year with Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Rodgers is healthy, he's been getting 1,100 yards with bums. So you add Aaron Rodgers there, that's probably going to be 1,700 yards. So that's going to be top of the market for both of them. So life's about redistributing funds, right? So you hope that in 2 years, when Aaron Rodgers retires, that you've developed somebody behind him, or you go find a guy like Jacoby Brissett. You say, hey, Aaron Rodgers gets hurt. We're going to put you in a place that, hey, we feel like we can make you our Kirk Cousins, where we don't have to pay you top of the market, but you have an opportunity. Because for Jacoby Brissett, his opportunity to be a starting quarterback in his league is over, pretty much, right? So when you talk about, okay, listen, come here, who knows? Aaron Rodgers may get hurt, but then you'll be throwing to Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
Not a bad gig. And what happens is, if you play well with these guys, we'll make you our Brock Purdy. We'll pay you some good money, not great money, because we understand we have to still build around you. But you're still relatively 30? He's probably like 30 years old, 32 years old. We'll hand you the keys afterwards, and then we'll draft another young guy behind you. So I expect, who knows? Maybe the Jets draft a guy like Penix in the 3rd round. If he's available, if his medicals check out, you draft him and let him sit behind Aaron Rodgers and make him the 3rd quarterback, and you have Jacoby Brissett. And if Penix shows, now you got a guy for 5 years or a guy for 4 years, because you're getting him out of the 1st round, that you don't have to really worry about.
Yeah, and listen, the quarterback position, they can play. It's different, right? Back in the day, 32, 33, they retired. Now they're playing well into their 30s. So that, they can definitely do that. Speaking of Aaron Rodgers, listen, he's coming off that Achilles injury, right? He'll be turning 40 later on this year. But how confident are you in him? Does he come back with a sense of vengeance and goes, you know what, I'm going to prove to everyone why the Jets got me and why I am who I am?
I mean, the Jets won 7 games, right? I would think that if Aaron Rodgers was there, they would have beat Atlanta, they would have beat Oakland or Las Vegas. I think his war is worth at least three wins.
Yeah.
So 3 more wins, the Jets are in the playoffs. So what are we talking about, right? I mean, I think Stevie Wonder can see that one. And if they're able to go out and get some more weapons and upgrade, you're confident that Brees is a dude. If Brees wasn't on a pitch count early, I think Brees easily can be a 1,000 yard guy, like Ricky Waters, like Roger Craig. He can definitely be a 1,000 guy. He can be a 1,200 guy. You know what I mean? Yeah. He damn near had 700 yards with no quarterback and being the only weapon, right? So you talk about that aspect.
Line as well.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So if you go draft one and buy one, I think Aaron Rodgers can be every bit that he's always been. And people always laugh when people talk about, oh, Aaron Rodgers, he's 40. Not really, in my opinion, because is Jordan Love really 25? Nah, nah,
Yeah,
not really, right? Because
yeah,
how many hits did Jordan Love receive when Aaron Rodgers was there? How many
yeah,
tackles did he receive? So ask yourself, how many tackles did Aaron Rodgers take sitting behind Brett Favre for 3 years?
yeah. None, right? And you look at Matthew Stafford, he's younger than Aaron Rodgers, but he
More
actually
wear
may
and
be
tear.
old. Yeah,
My
yeah.
my point is the such thing as a old 40 and a young 40. Like
Mhm.
he didn't play for 3 years. So like, yeah, you can name me how long he's been in the league, but when you do that, always subtract 3 from it, and then tell me how you feel about him.
Yeah.
So is this a 40-year-old trying to be like Tom Brady? No, Tom Brady, this is to me, this is a 37-year-old quarterback. So if we were telling you that Aaron Rodgers is about to turn 37, how optimistic would you be about it?
He won MVP, right? At 37, right? So I'm
Right,
saying I'm taking
right,
that.
because when he's 37, he really was 34.
Yep. No, that's a great point. Yeah. So I listen. I think Jet fans should be optimistic. I think once he comes back, I think it's just going to be
Yeah.
something. I know. Listen, it's obviously
Who's
Super Bowl or bust, but
who's older? Who's older? LeBron James or Joel Embiid?
I'm going to say Joel Embiid.
Yeah, because
I'm a big Laker guy, so
yeah,
I
because
got to stick up for my
yeah,
boy
yeah, because
LeBron.
he's because Joel Embiid is beat the hell. Like I said before, Ahmad Bradshaw was the oldest running back I've ever seen in my life. He's 50 in his second year because how he runs, and when I see that, I see that for Pacheco too.
Mhm.
Pacheco's a guy that because listen, it's great. I understand you running through tackles, run like your hair is on fire. They still hits. That's
And big
that's
hits.
that's why Brandon Jacobs didn't last too long, did he?
You're right.
Neither did Earl Campbell. It was beautiful while it lasted, but Earl Campbell only played 6 years.
That's wild to think about, right? When you think about it like that, that's very true. Real quick before we end, right? Gotta ask Super Bowl pick, right? Who are you leaning towards? Listen, we talked about what Mahomes and obviously
Mhm.
Andy Reid can outcoach anybody, right? But we
Yeah,
all know Kyle Shanahan is going to be ready, and he's not going to do what the Ravens did. He's going to stick to what he's got and what he does when he does best. Obviously, that defense kind of started off a little shaky these past two, playoff games,
they've
but
been real tricky. Yeah,
yeah, how can they get back? And who do you think wins this game?
it's gonna be tough, right? Remember the last time they played, it came down to a throw here, a throw there. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So you talk about a rematch. Now he has a more reliable quarterback, or one that he feels can make the throw. Even though, I mean, I don't know if he called bank off of Veldel's face mask or not, but it
Probably not.
worked. It worked out in his favor, and you know that I love to see the fact I love to see Kittles against Chris Jones, right? I think that's going to be a hell of a matchup because he'll stick his head in there and you know they'll run the ball. And, it's about how the game starts and it's about philosophies. Spagnola is probably one of the best big game coordinators there is. And I think he's so secure and happy in what he is.
Mhm.
You notice most teams, why do we have questions about the Ravens, right? Because they lost their defense coordinator. Why do we have questions about potentially Dallas? Because Dan Quinn could be going. The quickest way to break down a dynasty is to steal the coaches, but those coaches don't want to go anywhere. Like Spagnuolo is not even, he don't even put his name in a hat to be a head coach. So like because of that continuity and consistency, packages can continue to grow because you have the same guy calling the plays. So he's one of the best big game coordinators there is. So let's see what he has for the nuance and the complexities that Shanahan can have, and let's see if Shanahan can finish one because we love this San Francisco experiment. It's beautiful. They win a bunch of games, but they haven't cashed in yet. And you have to ask
Yeah.
yourself, like, at what point are we going to start calling these guys, guys that just can kind of get there and can't finish? And I think Mahomes has shown that his experience is not too much. Like Brock Purdy struggled his first 2 games early on. They're going to have to get him off and get him going, and McCaffrey's going to have to do special stuff.
Yeah.
And that defense concerns me. So if I had to pick, I would go with Kansas City, simply because not because they're the better team, but they weren't the better team when they played Baltimore either. they don't beat themselves, much like a lot of those Patriot teams didn't beat themselves. When you look at it, like, man, they weren't that good, but they were good in situational football. And that's what big games come down to, either making a play or not making a play, either fumbling the ball in the end zone on the 1 yard line if you're Zay Flowers, or not fumbling it, right?
Yeah.
That's not throwing the ball into triple coverage and taking the check down and living to fight another day, or kicking the field goal if you're Dan Campbell. It comes down to those decisions. Right. So I'm excited about it, but if I had to pick and bet my house on it, I would go with Kansas City.
Yeah, listen, I think most people will probably agree with you. I mean, listen, like you mentioned, it's experience, right? Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, man, they've been there, they've done it, they know what it takes. They know they don't fold, right? They know what it takes to get
Mm-hmm.
there. You look at, like we mentioned, LeBron James, right? When you're a champion, right, you know what it takes, and you're not going to
Yeah.
make those mental errors
Yeah. Most,
in
mo-
those situational spots.
most disappointing group in all the playoffs, in my opinion, is the D line of the San Francisco 49ers. Why are we paying $20 million to all these dudes and we're not wrecking shop? I mean,
Yeah,
you look at Skipper. If it wasn't for Skipper last week, Panay Sewell was kicking everybody ass, including Bosa. If Skipper wasn't out there as the extra tight end, he wouldn't have those sacks. And Chase Young is getting railroaded on run downs. And it's like, man, hold up. Because next year they had to pay Chase Young because they gave a first round draft pick. You mean to tell me this is what I get out of a unit that makes over $85 million annually? 4 guys?
yeah.
Nah, I'm gonna need a rebate on that.
They listen, and they have a chance to redeem themselves, right? You got the Super Bowl, come out and show it, because if you don't put pressure
Yeah.
on Patrick Mahomes, he's going to do exactly what he did with the Ravens, right?
And it's gonna have to be with 4, and they're gonna have to make sure that they don't allow him to get out of the pocket, right? Because Mahomes, even though we know he had the dad bod, he's fast enough and crafty enough, like Brock Purdy. When you
Yeah.
see openings, he steps up and steps out. So you're gonna have to be disciplined within your pass rush to make sure that if he steps up, he tries to run, that you get him down and keep him in a well, make him throw from a well, and don't allow him to retreat and get angles to extend plays.
No, I agree. Last question, Bart, before we go. If you had a guess, right? What your educated guess,
Mm-hmm.
who's scoring the first touchdown? Who you like to
Ah,
score the first touchdown?
sound like you're gonna place a bet, and if I win, you're not gonna give me no percentage. Um, First touchdown, I think. When you think about it, I think both teams usually come out tight when you think about the Super Bowl, so it's going to be a couple punts before somebody actually scores a touchdown. I probably would go with a guy like either Debo or Ayuk.
The 49ers side. Okay. I
Yeah,
like it.
because
10%.
it'd be some.
10%, Bart.
Yeah.
If this hits, 10%. I got you.
All right, man. Don't pay me in pesos.
Listen, I'm Colombian, so you don't know what kind of money's coming out of there. So I got
Oh,
you. But Bart, thanks again, man. Really appreciate you jumping on here and speaking to us. We really appreciate it. Good luck, everything. It should be a fun game. Excited to see the Super Bowl, and hopefully the Jets, could do something this year where we're all excited here in New York.
all good. The world is better when New York is winning because it brings unreasonable fans to do unreasonable things.